Loki, you cannot stay in the doorway, come on. Oh, or drop your bone on my laptop. Go on, over there. And we begin again. Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if it is your first time here. My name is Jess and I took something of an impromptu hiatus in the month of April. Various different things that I'm hoping to be able to explain in a video that I will be uploading really soon, but yeah, just various different things combined to mean that I just didn't get time to film or upload in the month of April, which means that I have my books that I read in the month of March and I have the books that I read in the month of April to share with you today. So I'm going to start with the books that I read in the month of March. Probably this will end up being 2 videos, so this will be part 1 and then I'll put part 2 up in a couple of days because I did actually manage to read a fair amount across the 2 months, and I want to catch you up on the great books that I read in the month of March rather than just skipping past them and moving on. So without further ado, let's start talking about the books. So the first book that I read in March was The Chemist by Stephanie Meyer. This is a spy crime thriller book with a romance twist to it, and having now read Twilight, The Host and The Chemist by Stephanie Meyer, I am beginning to suspect that I like Stephanie Meyer's writing style more than I like the stories that she is trying to tell, because there was just something off about this book. And although I find her books really easy to read and really easy to get into, there are just several problematic elements to all of the books that I have read by her, and this one sadly was no exception. So we're following a woman who has various names throughout the book, but we will call her Alex, who works for a super secret government agency, basically creating cocktails of drugs that can be given to people of interest to extract information from them without leaving any physical marks. And then one day that government agency turns against Alex and she is forced to go on the run, and then she is given the opportunity to basically turn the tables on this government agency and get her life back, and that is what she does, and the story kind of unfolds from there. What let the book down for me most strongly was the romance element. So this is a slight spoiler. If you want to go into this book completely blind, then I will leave a timestamp, but Alex gets some information that someone is key to her opportunity to get her life back, and she makes the decision to abduct this individual, and they meet on a train and this person asks her out for a drink, and she uses this to get them off the train and abduct them so that she can then torture them for information. Then it turns out that this person was the wrong person, but they're still like, oh hey, never mind that you've just tortured me, you're really pretty and you don't really know it, so how about we still go out for that drink? And I'm willing to overlook plot holes and I'm willing to suspend reality if I'm really loving a story, but when the entire rest of the plot hinged on this romance and I didn't buy the romance, because I just think that if you'd been tortured by someone and then it turned out that you were not the person, or if you'd been tortured by someone full stop, you wouldn't then be asking them for a drink. And this person, the whole romance is basically hinged on the fact that they are just such an incredibly good person, but I feel like it's even a stretch to say that they wouldn't want to get as far away from their torturer as possible. It just didn't work for me, and it kind of ruined the whole rest of the book, really let it down. Hence why I only gave it 3 stars. Next I read The Winter of the Witch by Catherine Arden. This is the final book in Catherine Arden's Winter Night trilogy, and I know that since I made the decision that I was going to finish this trilogy this year, these books have featured in a lot of my videos, but honestly I do not regret it. I loved this book. I seriously loved this book. Different again from books 1 and 2 in its pacing and its tone, but oh my goodness, what an ending to this trilogy. So these are historical fantasy fiction set in medieval Russia, And at the start of the book we meet our main character Vazia, who is living on a remote farmstead, and we begin to discover that Vazia has the ability to see and interact with spirits and gods and demons like Morozko, the winter demon, figures which have featured in Russian fairy tales for many, many years. Then along comes a priest to Vazia's village and begins to introduce the concept of religion. And as the story progresses, Catherine Arden introduces many different factual, political and historical elements blended with this mythological fairy tale-esque vibe, and Vazia finds herself having to basically stand as a bridge between the old and the new, but find a way to help the people of Russia. The finale of this book was just incredibly fitting. I shed so many tears. Catherine Arden's writing is just beautiful and compelling. Vazia as our protagonist, we really see her change and grow as the trilogy progresses, but she's just so fierce and courageous, and I just loved her. Honestly, could not recommend this trilogy enough. I think that it is fantastic and I could talk about it all day, and I gave this book 5 stars. Then I finished listening to American Dirt by Janine Cummings, which is actually an audiobook that I started in February, and I don't know if I have been living under a rock, but I had zero idea of the controversy surrounding this book until I finished it and went on to Goodreads, and then I was like, oh, okay. So I'm still going to review it because I read it, but obviously I'm reviewing it from my perspective as a white person. This is the story of a mother and son who are forced to flee their home in Mexico. At the beginning of the book we meet Lydia and Luca as they hide in a bathroom while their entire immediate and extended family is murdered by a local cartel, and we are given to believe that the reason for this is because Lydia's husband is a journalist and he had recently written an article about the narco traffickers. As the story progresses, we uncover that it's actually much more than it first appears. The narrator for the audiobook was absolutely fantastic. She did a great job of creating a sense of tension as I was listening, and there were some parts where I could not absorb the story fast enough because I just wanted to know what on earth was going to happen. Having since finished and read a number of reviews, I can appreciate that what the author has done is very much whitewash the experience of the Mexican migrants as they travel to the USA, and she definitely paints El Norte as this incredible safe haven. But what I do think that she does well is shine a light on the experiences of the migrants and some of the horrific and horrendous things that the migrants experience in trying to get to the USA and in trying to get away from things that are happening in their hometowns and to a place where they can earn money and have a better life experience. So that is kind of the hope. While nothing in particular happens to our 2 main characters, they do meet 2 sisters who join them, and we get to experience some of the things that they've been through, and also they hear from various migrants on their journeys as well. So I know that this book is problematic. I can't obviously speak to the accuracy of the story or where the author got her inspiration from. If you do have an interest in that, on Goodreads there are a number of reviews which recommend more own voices type novels for people to pick up, so I definitely recommend going and looking at those. But yeah, on the whole I really enjoyed it. I gave it 5 stars. I thought the audiobook was particularly good, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. Then I picked up Paris Adrift by E.J. Swift. This was actually a book that I picked up when I was looking for steampunk novels. I had a hankering to read some steampunk, and this was recommended to me, which was the first mistake because this is not actually a steampunk novel, it's a time travel novel, and I just thought that it was okay. I didn't go into it thinking it was a steampunk novel, by the way. I knew what it was before I read it. So this is about a young woman called Hallie who has left her home in the UK for reasons that are not massively clear and fled to Paris, and there she discovers that she is linked to a hole in time, which means that she can go back to various different points in Paris throughout history, and she is called upon to go back and change a pivotal moment which ultimately ends up in the destruction of the world as we know it. The rub is that every time Hallie travels back in time, it costs her physically, and she becomes a little bit more detached from her reality and her surroundings. And obviously, as with any time travel novel or time travel experience, there is the risk that she will change more than she means to. As I said, I thought that this was just okay. It took me a long time to read it, and it was the type of book where when I was reading it, I was enjoying it, but when I put it down, I didn't feel any particular drive or compulsion to pick it up. There wasn't anything that really hooked me. The characters all just felt a little bit flat. As a story, it just felt a little bit basic and slightly boring. So I gave it 3.5 stars because, as I said, when I was actually physically reading it, I was enjoying it, but it just didn't really hook me in the way that I had hoped that it would. So yeah, just an okay read. Then I read A Discovery of Witches by Deborah Harkness, and again, this is a book that I expected to like a lot more than I actually did. So this is paranormal romance fiction about a world in which vampires, demons and witches live among us as normal people, and it's about a witch called Diana and a vampire called Matthew who basically fall in love even though they're not supposed to. And I had really high hopes for this book. I have seen incredible reviews. I've heard people say the TV show, the TV adaptation is really good. My main issue is that it took a long time to get going. The first 2/3 of this book are essentially will they, won't they, should they, shouldn't they, do they, don't they, and it only got interesting in the last third. This is a trilogy, and I think that the second book potentially will be more up my street because it has a historical fiction element to it, but over 600 pages is a big commitment when you're not really sure if you're going to enjoy a book, and this was over 600 pages, and honestly the first 400 could have been condensed for me. It just didn't go anywhere, it didn't hook me, it didn't engage me. I was just kind of reading by rote and waiting for something interesting to happen. It was okay, the characters were interesting, I liked the setup, I liked Diana. It was alright, it just didn't grip me in the way that I thought it would until the very last section, and I just was a little bit bored by it, to be honest. So I gave this 3.5 stars. Big question mark over whether I would want to pick up the second book because it feels like a big commitment for something that I'm not necessarily sure that I'm going to enjoy, so I don't know. Then I reread Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owens. This was my book club's pick for the month, and honestly this just saved the month for me. If I could give a book more than 5 stars, this would be the book. Honestly, I think I loved the reread more than I loved it the first time I read it. It just is so good. So this is fiction. It's historical fiction, and we're following a dual timeline. So we have a more present day timeline which is set in the late 1960s, and then we follow our main character Kaya from when she is a young girl right the way through till her story joins with this main timeline. In the 1960s, a local town's sweetheart is found dead in the marshes in North Carolina, and we're following this kind of murder mystery element to what happened, as well as I said, following Kaya's story. I think that one of the reasons that I enjoyed this more is because I knew what the outcome of the murder mystery element side of the book was, so I wasn't looking for red herrings and clues, and I wasn't trying to work out what had happened. I could just savour the writing and enjoy the story, and just watch it all unfold, and I just thought that it was so good. It's beautifully written, wonderfully executed, everything rich and descriptive, and the characters just get you, and the way that Delia Owens just captures the surroundings and the nature, and it's just, if I could put this book in the hands of everyone who has ever thought about reading it, I absolutely would, because I just love it so much. Brilliant. So pleased that I read it. 5+++++ stars. Then the final book that I read this month was The Couple Next Door by Shari Lapina, and I'm beginning to suspect that mostly thrillers are books about not very likeable people doing not very likeable things to other not very likeable people. This book's no exception. So we follow a couple, Anne and Marcus, who leave, I think, their 6-month-old baby in their house, and they go to a dinner party next door, and then when they come home, the baby is gone, and we are following the fallout of this. Obviously, because it's a thriller and it's quite fast-paced, you very much hit the ground running. I can't say too much without giving away a major spoiler. I really liked the concept. It was really fast-paced. There were a number of twists and turns that I didn't see coming, but ultimately it just felt a little bit flat. I didn't really like or engage with any of the characters. I felt the most empathy for Anne, our mother, but again, she does something at the end which didn't fit with the majority of her character for the rest of the book, and so it made it feel very unbelievable for me. Overall, I think that it is a good page turner. It was very entertaining. If you like this style of book, then I think that it would be right up your alley. Didn't blow my socks off. As I say, there were a number of moments when I was like, oh, I did not see that coming, but it was just an okay read. I gave this 3 stars. So there you go. They are the books that I read in the month of March. A mixed bag, some that I really enjoyed, some that I just thought were okay. Do let me know if you've read any of the books that I have talked about and what your thoughts were. I always love to chat more with you in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. I will have my April wrap up coming in a couple of days, so do watch out for that. If you enjoyed this video, please give me the thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you aren't already. Take care, and I'll see you all soon.